Hey everyone, it is late at night and I'm Norman. Tonight we're going to be looking at my most expensive watch, the Nomos Orion Anthracite, and we'll be putting it side by side with an affordable watch that could be a viable alternative to it, the Nordgreen Native with a black dial. So let us begin. Alright, so tonight we're going to be comparing the watch that I just recently purchased with the Nomos Orion Anthracite. Because when I first looked at this watch in person, the similarities were striking, as you can see. And I thought to myself, this might be an affordable alternative to the Nomos Orion. So let's compare these two watches. Let's start at the lugs. The lugs on this watch are small and kind of hidden a little bit beneath the case. When you look at it from top down, a portion of those are kind of hidden there. They're very small and subtle. The Nomos's lugs are not, and this is a point of contention for some people because they are really long and it leaves a gap here where the strap is connected. This has never bothered me. In person, this watch just looks normal to me, but they do bother some people. You'll notice that both cases are nice and elegant, thin, not chunky at all. The edges of the case are similarly rounded on both of them, which highlights the chrome finish on the case. You can see their similarities here. The Nordgreen looks even thinner because of the flying saucer shaped case that it has. However, that does cause the watch to sit above your wrist a little bit on these edges. The crown on this watch is smaller than the Nomos. However, this is a quartz watch, so you're not going to be using that crown very often. However, this crown is still pretty well proportioned with the watch. Now, the Orion does have a display case back and an absolutely brilliant movement that we can see through it. This is their in-house movement based on the 7001, which is my favorite hand-wound movement. The finishing on there is just great. While the Nordgreen has a solid case back, but it's nice and simple and looks great. I like how small that center portion is there. And around that ring, they've packed a ton of information. Their logo's kind of fun. Not a bad case back at all. And one thing that's really cool on the Nordgreen is this crystal. It's domed enough to distort everything and catch light and throw it all over the place. It is really cool to look down and see this crystal. In person, it just looks phenomenal. The Nomos's crystal is also domed, but very, very subtly. And there's zero distortion at all. It really just does its job of vanishing on the Orion, which is great. It's just not quite as fun as the Nordgreen's crystal. And it's so cool that for a $150 watch, you do get a sapphire crystal. That was a surprise to me. You'll notice that the chrome indices on the Nordgreen vanish quite a bit more than the Nomos. A lot of times you'll look down and it just looks like an empty black dial with nothing on it. Even the hands vanish a bit more. On the Nomos, they do vanish, but you can still kind of see them even when that's the case. They don't completely go away. And the minutes track is much less subtle on the Orion. On the Nordgreen, it really vanishes. The hands on the Nomos are much longer than on the Nordgreen. But then again, these hands are longer than on most watches. I mean, look at that minutes hand. It goes right up to the edge of the dial, and the hour hand nearly touches the hour markers. These hands look so crazy when you're setting the time on this watch because they're just so long. And watching them spin around that dial is just crazy. The batten markers for the hours on this watch are a little bit longer than on the Nordgreen. That was one thing about this watch I wasn't sure I was going to like or not. It doesn't really bother me so much. I was afraid that it might, because look at how short those markers are. But in person, they look pretty good. They don't really look undersized at all. just kind of a different design choice. The hands are a great length on this watch. They're a little bit thicker than on the Nomos, so the Nomos's hands look a bit more elegant than this watch. And actually it may just be the length on the Nomos that makes them appear thinner. It's kind of tough to tell. You'll also notice that there's a subtle texture on the dial of the Nomos, which is pretty cool. And the dial itself isn't totally flat. You can see that it kind of bows down at the edge. And it does have the added element of a sub-seconds. Now both of these are 36mm watches, but when you look at them side by side, look at how much larger the Nordgreen looks than the Nomos. They do not look like they're the same size at all. It's so crazy. Alright, let me take off my PRX looking Citizen watch, and we'll do a comparison of what these look like when they're on your wrist. We'll begin with the Nordgreen, and here is the Nordgreen on my 7-inch wrist. You can see that it does not look like a 36mm watch at all, but look at the cool lighting on that dial there, and what the crystal does, how thin it looks on the wrist. Yeah, this is definitely very Orion looking. The aesthetics are very similar. And now for the Nomos, you can see that there's a lot more going on with that dial, with the texture, the indices showing up a bit more. It's actually less minimal than the Nordgreen, and it does wear smaller. However, these lugs kind of counter that a little bit, so it doesn't look too small at all. It really hugs the wrist well. Yeah, I feel like the Nordgreen might be a good, affordable option for this aesthetic right here. But the Nomos is brilliant, that's for sure. So there you have it, the Nordgreen native black dialed watch side by side with the Nomos Orion Anthracite. And while the Nomos completely blows the Nordgreen out of the water, I feel like the Nordgreen for that price is actually a viable option if you're going for the same aesthetic as the Nomos Orion. Thanks for watching.